Thanks for joining, everyone. This is Al from BluFo Innovations. If you've been following the tutorial videos so far, you should have a web page that looks similar to this. Again, I know we're excited to style this and make it look a lot more interesting, which we will do after this video. But first, we have to add our footer. Now, you can add whatever you want in your footer, but let's take a moment to think about some things you might commonly see in a website's footer. You might have your contact info, additional links, a privacy policy, copyright info, and much more. In this tutorial, we're going to add 4 things to our footer. We're going to add some additional navigation links to make it easier for our users to navigate through the page. We're going to add a call to action, something they can interact with. We're going to add some social media icons to connect with us better. And we're going to add our copyright info. Now let's start creating these components one at a time. And to do that, we're going to use an element we haven't used yet, and that's a div element or division element. And the reason we're doing this is because when we go to style a page, we're going to want these components positioned next to each other on a page, not stacked on top of each other. And the first component we're going to create is just a simple set of navigation links. This might seem excessive, having links at the top of the page and at the bottom, but if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. If you have a really long web page and somebody scrolls all the way to the bottom, you don't want them to have to scroll all the way back up to the top to click on a link. So we're going to create a very simple set of links here, and this is similar to what we've done. All we need is a list of links. So we're going to create an unordered list, which if you remember is a UL tag, that's your unordered list. And then we're going to create a list item, LI. And this time, instead of having just regular text, we want a link, which if you recall from earlier videos, that's an A anchor tag. And then href will be the actual link that we want to navigate to. For now, we're just going to put a hashtag there that'll navigate to the top of the page, but later we'll put a real link in there. I'm going to close that tag, and then the text will be HTML. And now I need 2 more links. So I'm going to use that handy shortcut, right? I'm going to hold Shift and Alt, then hit the arrow down key a couple times, and we'll change this to CSS, and this one to JavaScript. And just like that, I've created my list of links down here. Again, not very pretty, but it is functional. Now, for the sake of simplicity, I haven't showed you how to use comments before, but they're super important at any level of programming. It's going to help you stay organized, it's going to allow you to read your own code, and it's going to allow others to read your code and understand what's going on. So I'm going to show you how to use an HTML comment. To do that, I'm just going to create a new line here. I'm going to use our bracket, and then I'm going to use an exclamation point, a couple dashes, and you'll see it already closes that for us and it turns it green. That means it's a comment. And whatever text we put in between here is only going to show up in our code. It's never going to show up on our web page. So here, I'm just going to call this navigation links. I'm going to save it. And like I just said, if we go back to our web page, it doesn't show that text here at all. That's only in the code. That's only for people who are reading your code. Great, now let's create the next component. So I'm going to go down a couple of spaces, and I'm going to show you how to make a comment a different way using VS Code. And to do this, what we're going to do is just type in the text we want. So for this component, we want a call to action. A call to action is a way for users to interact with your website, and ours is just going to be a mailing list sign up. I just type in the text, and now I'm going to use the shortcut, which is holding down the Control or Command key, and I hit slash. And just like that, it turns it into a comment. And now we're going to create another div element. Inside that div tag, we're going to use another element we haven't used before, and that's the form element. Now this tutorial series is only going to scratch the surface of forms, but they're a super important part of web development because that's the main way that users interact with your website. Inside the form tag, we want to put form elements, which there's many of, but we'll start with the input element. So that's the input tag, and we're going to give this a name attribute. So I'll say name equals email list, and then we'll give it another attribute, which is type. That's the input type, and you'll see there's many different options here, all with different purposes, but we want to receive the user's email address. So I'm going to make this type email. We'll close that tag, and then we want to create another form element, which is a button. So I'll use the button tag, and we're going to give this an attribute type as well. And for buttons, there's fewer options, but we're going to call this submit. And all that means is that when a user clicks on this button, it will submit the form, and we'll see that in action later. And then the last thing is just the text that will show on our buttons. So we'll just say send. And now if I save this and go back to our page, you'll see there it is. There's our input form and the button to send it. Obviously, it's not going to be working yet. We'll get to that later. Now I want to add a couple of things because a user may see our form but not know what it's for. The first thing I want to add is a label. To do that, I'm going to create a label element above our input, and we're going to give this an attribute for, and then that name below, email list. So it's a label for the email list input. And then when I close that tag, the text that goes in here is the text you'll see. So I'm going to put stay in touch. And then there's one more thing I want to add. I want to add placeholder text. So that's actually going to be text that's in our form before the user starts typing. To do that, I'm just going to add an attribute to my input, and that's going to be placeholder. And we're going to say join the mailing list. I'll save it, and again, if we go back to our page, there it is. Now it looks a little unorganized, again, because we haven't styled it, but there's our label, there's our placeholder text, and of course our button. And that completes our form for now. If you'd like to learn more about forms or form elements, I'll include a resource in the description, but for now, let's finish building out these last couple of components. The next one is going to be our social media icons. I'll create my comment, and we see these often on websites, but for now, we're not actually going to put the icons in place. I'll show you how to do that later when we attach an external resource. But for now, I just want to put 3 links in place as sort of a placeholder. And I'll do it the same way that I did our list items earlier. I'll do A times 3, and when I hit enter, there, 3A anchor elements are created, and I'll just call these Instagram. The next one we'll call Twitter or X, and the last one we'll say is YouTube. But of course, you can call these whatever you want. And if I'm to save this, you'll see there it is. Instagram, X, and YouTube, of course, they're mashed together, but when we replace those with icons, they'll look much nicer. And then we need to go on to creating our last component. And our last footer component is the copyright info. You'll see this at the bottom of almost every website, and in our case, we want to have just a very simple div with some text. It's just going to say copyright BluFo Innovations 2023, which is the time that I'm recording this video. I'll save it, and let's take a quick look at what we have so far. And there it is. And it might not feel like we've done a lot, but we actually have. We've done a lot. Here's our logo up here. We have a navigation bar, some headers, some lists. We have a form. We have placeholders for our social media icons. We've actually done a lot. And although it doesn't look good yet, we're going to start that process in the next video. We're going to start applying some CSS style, and that's where you get to be really creative and make the website your own. So I'm looking forward to the next tutorial with you.